Okay, hello everyone. It is Friday, and that means it is time for our studio review. This week's studio is one of my favorites. Flag Day. I say that a lot, don't I? But it's true. This one is also one of my favorites. A lot of creativity. I had a lot of fun actually yesterday with the studio talking to you all about it. So I'm actually, though, not going to focus on the Flag Day part of it, although I'll talk about that briefly. There are a few different parts to this studio, and I'm going to focus on the first part here, reading shape data from the file, and then we'll come down here and take a look at this fun little Norway example as well. But for starters, we're going to take a look at reading information from a file. This was a topic that we talked about in the prep work for this week as well, about how we can use Scanner to read information from a file. And this is something you're going to be asked to do on the homework assignment this week as well. And so we provided you this code. You would have seen this code in the prep work as well that you can use to select a file. And then what we want you to do is read the information from that file and draw the shape from that file on the screen. And so I think it's important to start by opening up one of these files and taking a peek, seeing what it looks like. There's the name of the shape, followed by, I believe this is going to be the color. These three values represent the color, followed by a value for true or false, indicating whether it should be filled or not. And then these values represent the position and the size. So these values are going to be the XY coordinate of the center position, and these would be the half width and the half height. So our task then is to read these values in and interpret them properly. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is detect, what shape we're dealing with, because that has a big effect on how we interpret, maybe not these values, right? But certainly the values that come, these values that come afterwards here at the end. So let's go ahead and read the shape in first. If I switch back over to the code, the shape is a string, and so I'm going to make a string variable for it. And I want to read it in from my scanner. And one of the common things that I see here that people do is they say in.nextLine. This is a very common idea to try. The problem is that in.nextLine reads in the entire line, so I can show you by just kind of printing out this content. I just want this to say the word rectangle or triangle or ellipse, right? But if I run this code and select one of these rectangle ones, you can see that what gets printed out isn't just the shape, but it's the entire file. That's because this content is all created on one line. There's a similar method that the scanner provides to us called next, which just is used to read a single token, or you can think of it as a single word. So if I run this code instead, you can see that when I select the file, I get just the shape, which is what I was going for. Okay. The next values from the file represent the color, and we know that there's going to be 3 of them. These look like integers to me, so I'm going to have the scanner read in 3 ints. Next, so the colors come in a particular order as well. Red comes first, followed by green, and then blue. Actually, at that point, we have enough information. We might as well go ahead and make the color by plugging in the red, green, and blue values that we've read from the file. Oops. Something like this. It does look like we need to import this, so we'll just go ahead and do that real quick. Okay. Now, referring back to the file, the next thing we're going to see is either a true or a false value to indicate whether or not this has been filled. And just like so it might be, you actually probably already guessed that this is going to be a Boolean value, or actually you could read it in as a string if you wanted to as well by using in.next. I saw some groups doing it that way. I think that's okay. I think you can do it that way. I think using in.next Boolean will also work here, though. We'll try it out and see. And then last, for the rectangle at least, we've got 4 double values, right? 2 for the x and y position, and then the half width and the half height. So let's go ahead and read those in last. So I'm reading in 4 double values, the x and y for the center, and the half width and the half height. And so at that point in time, all that's left for us to do is to draw our rectangle. Although we do need to know which version we're going to draw, right? So I'm going to ask first. If filled, then I need to draw a filled rectangle. There we go. Otherwise, we'll just do an unfilled rectangle, which should just be the outline. We also need to set the pen color as well. So actually, I mean, we could try it without doing that just to show you what would happen. Let's see if this works. If I select one of the rectangle files, I'm hoping, okay, so it's called pink filled, and it is filled, but it's not pink because we haven't actually accounted for the color yet. But in order to do that, we just need to use the set pen color method that exists here. Oh, it looks like I may have even complicated things a little bit, right? I didn't even need to make this. So you could have created the color if you wanted to and done it that way, or if you just wanted to use the red, green, and blue values directly, it looks like that would work too. I'm going to move this up here near where the red, green, and blue values are, just so that it's all in the same place. I think it's good to keep that all together. Let's try the pink one again now and see if we get a pink one. All right, great. There we have a pink one. Let's try an unfilled black outlined. That looks good. Okay, but there are other shapes that we can draw as well. So the next task would be, to take a look at an ellipse. You can see that it does read in the ellipse file, which is interesting, but it draws it as a square still. So let's open up one of those ellipse files and see what looks different. The purple outlined ellipse we can see has the name ellipse instead of rectangle. That makes sense. I see the color values, I see the values false, and then I see 4 values that represent the x, the y, the half width, and the half height. That all makes sense to me too, right? Okay, so if we go back to our code here, we now have 2 possibilities for what shape can be. It can either be rectangle or it can be ellipse. And so in order for us to know what to do, we have to come down here and check to see what that value is. So I'll say something like if the shape is equal to rectangle, then I want to do this stuff, right? And if it's not a rectangle, then I want to do an ellipse. And so the process is going to look exactly the same, right? Except for, oops, I didn't mean to delete that. The process is going to look exactly the same, except for instead of calling filled rectangle and rectangle, I'm going to call filled ellipse and ellipse. Let's try it out. Let's see how this works. So it should still work for the rectangles. Uh-oh. What happened? So that looks like a pink circle to me. Well, let's try it with the ellipses and see. Here's a red filled ellipse. Okay, I guess that's red. It looks kind of brownish on this computer. I don't know if that's just me, but close enough. Here's a purple outline. Okay, yeah, that's true. But what happened with our rectangles? Let's try another rectangle and see. Yeah, see, they're all coming up circles now. Excuse me. And there's a little error that I made here that's a tricky one to catch, especially for people who are just doing this for the first time. It has to do with how I'm checking this string. So for integers, for booleans, for doubles, using double equals is something that kind of makes sense, right? For strings, however, it unfortunately doesn't work. And the reason for that is a little bit, outside the scope of what we've covered so far. But in Module 7, coming up in a few weeks, we're going to talk about something called objects. And so strings actually are objects. They are not primitive types, right? Which is what integers and doubles are. You can actually kind of notice that just by the fact that, these words turn purple, but string doesn't, even though we've been using it in a similar way. That's kind of interesting, right? So the way that we compare things that are not primitive types, the way that we compare things that are objects is by using dot equals. So I'm going to use dot equals instead. And now that will properly perform the comparison so that it should draw the rectangles. And if I tell it to draw the circles or the ellipses, then it should draw the ellipse. Okay. there's still one more shape for us to try to accommodate. So let's open up one of the triangle ones. If you did the prep work example with me this week, you know that, excuse me, you know that there is no triangle method that exists. So you can't do that, right? You just have to draw it as a polygon. So you may need to refresh your memory as to how to draw polygons. I would encourage you to have the standard draw API available to you, which you can look at right here. So you can see that while they have methods for circles, ellipses, squares, and rectangles, there's nothing for triangles. We have to draw it as a polygon. And polygons take in arrays of x values and y values, right? So that deviates from the way that we read in the rectangles and ellipses. And I want to make sure that the code reflects that. We're only actually going to read in the values this way for rectangles and ellipses, right? But if it's a triangle, I actually need to do something different. So I'm going to pick that off first. I'm going to say if shape.equals triangle up here. And the reason why I prefer to do it that way is so that for the triangle, I can read in the proper number of values to create the triangle. And then down here for the non-triangles that follow the file format that we've been using before, I can have them read in their x, y values and then draw them appropriately. So we now just need to go ahead and read in the values from this to make those arrays. There's a few different ways you can do this. We know how big the arrays are going to be, right? So I can make, I'm sorry, they're not going to be integer arrays. They're going to be double arrays. I'm sorry. So a double array for x with 3 values in it. I can make a double array for y with 3 values in it. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and set those values by reading them in. So the x values, it goes x, y, x, y, x, y. So the x values, I'm going to have to set the x0 value first. Then the y0 value comes next. Then the x1 value, y1, and then finally the third coordinate here. There we go. And the last thing that we then need to do is call the polygon method, although we do need to still check to see whether it's filled or not. So actually I need that if statement for that. If it's filled, we're going to draw it as a filled polygon. And if it's not, then we'll draw it as just an unfilled polygon. Okay, so we can clearly see the 3 sections of the code, and I think what's also important is that we can see how the way that we use the scanner matches the file that we're looking at or we're expecting to look at, based on the values that appear, the data types, and the order that they appear in that file. So let's try it out and make sure that it works for the triangles. Actually, before I try the triangles, I want to make sure that squares and circles still work properly. So let's take a look at those. There's a rectangle. All right, that looks good. Let's try one of the circle ones. Here we go. That looks good. All right, let's try the triangles now. Here is a filled triangle that's green. That looks beautiful. And then the outline. Oh, there we go. I believe that's going to do it for the first part of this studio. I'm going to go ahead and skip down to the last part of the studio, which is a really fun one. Although before I do, I think let's take a quick second to talk about the flags. I think this is one of the more creative, whoops, that's not the right assignment. This is one of the more creative and fun studios that we have. Hopefully you had fun doing this. I saw some really cool, really interesting flags in class yesterday. It was really a lot of fun to see what people came up with. So if you have a really cool flag design, I would encourage you to, share it with the world if you feel comfortable doing so. It's your flag. You can do what you want with it. But I always love seeing what beautiful artwork students create. So if nothing else, I would love for you to come into my office and show me anything wonderful that you've made in studio or otherwise. But I want to focus on one flag in particular, which is Norway. And so if you look at the Norwegian flag, it's called the mother of all flags because there's actually 6 other countries' flags embedded within the Norway flag. So if you take a peek at the way that this is drawn, it's very carefully drawn out in sort of a grid style fashion, such that the x coordinate is 22, or 23 actually, it goes from 0 to 22, right? And the y coordinate goes from 0 to 16. And you can actually see that the number of blocks that each of these is wide is shown to us here. So what we're going to do is we're essentially going to resize the window and try to zoom in on a particular part of this Norwegian flag in order to make the 6 flags that we see down here below. That's the idea behind this part of the studio. I think it'll kind of make sense after you see it a few times. Let's go ahead and open up the file. So here is the code that draws the Norwegian flag, right? This is I believe the code that's set up to do that. And for the scale for Norway, you can see that it's just the entire flag. But where in that flag do we see France? So if I want to pull out France, I need to find, even sections of blue, white, and red. So I kind of see that right here, right? Kind of see that right here. 1 block of blue, 1 block of white, and 1 block of red. How tall is it? I don't know. Is it like 2 blocks tall or so? So I want to set my X scale to go from half of this blue. So that's going to be 6, 7, 8, right? And then it's going to go over 3. So 8 to 11 or something like that. 8 to 10. We might have to play around with it a little bit to get a feel. And then maybe go from 0 to 2 on the Y scale. Let's try it out. All of these are just going to be accomplished by setting the X scale and the Y scale. So I said from like 8 to 10 maybe. And the Y scale, we'll try by going from 0 to 2 and see if that works. All right. Let's continue to the flag. Oh! Well, clearly I did not do something properly, huh? Oh, I'm sorry, I need to call mother at the end, like this. Or no, I don't. Do I? Yeah, there we go. So you can see that I was off a little bit. It tried, right? But the scale was not quite correct. So I got half blue and half white. I actually need to scooch this up to 11, I think. Let's try that. There we go. That looks like the picture. So the proper scale, it looks like, is from 8 to 11 and from 0 to 2. Or actually, I'm not sure how much the Y scale actually matters for this since it's just even all the way across. But that certainly gets the job done. Let's go ahead and see if we can tackle Indonesia. So Indonesia is all red on the top and white on the bottom. So there's some sections where that appears, right? Here on the side looks like the easiest. So I'm going up 6, 7, 8, 9. So I want to go from maybe 9 to 11 on the Y scale and 0 to 2 on the X scale or something like that. I'm just going to go ahead and copy these. Oops. Yeah, there we go. So from 9 to 11, from 0 to 2. Let's see. There's France. There's Indonesia. It worked. That's good. That looks like the Indonesian flag. Okay. Now we're going to do the Netherlands, so kind of like France, just tilted sideways. So I see that showing up. Actually, it's not far from the Indonesian one, right? I just need to extend my Y down a little bit, so that's pretty straightforward to think about. Just need to pick up some of this blue down here. So I'm just going to copy the Indonesian one and move the Y scale. Whoa, what did I do? I hit the wrong button. Sorry about that. Move the Y scale down 1 to 8. Starting from 8. Let's see if that does it for me. France, Indonesia. There's the Netherlands. Great. All right, now we have to do Poland. It's like Indonesia, just reverse. So we can see that's going to be not far from where we were. All right, let me go back to the picture here. So it's going to be from 5 to 7, right, on the y-axis, it looks like. Let's try that. Let's see if that works for Poland. France, Indonesia, Netherlands. There's Poland. There's the Polish flag. That looks good. Just a couple more to go here. We've got Thailand. All right. So this one's looking a little tricky. Clearly has the blue stripe going right down the middle of it. So I think looking at, something over here is where we're headed, right? So if I'm going, let's see, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So starting from 10 on the x-axis, something bigger than 10. And then on the y-axis, we're going to go from 5 to, let's see, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 maybe? Let's try that. Something bigger than 10 on the x-axis. So we'll go from 10 to 12 maybe. And we'll go from like 5 to 11. Let's try it. A little bit of guess and check happening here. Netherlands, Poland, Thailand. Oh, nailed it. First try. I love that. It looks good. Thailand is right there. And then last, we have Finland. So Finland clearly is going to occur right smack in the middle. It's just taking this white section here, it looks like, right? So we're going to go from 6 on the x-axis and 6 on the y-axis. And we're going to go up to 10 on the y-axis, it looks like. And then it's just a matter of how far out on the x-axis we need to go. Start from 6 and 6. We'll go from 10 on the y-axis and a little bit longer, I think, on the x-axis, maybe 12. Let's try that for starters and see. Close, right? I mean, it looks kind of close. I need a little bit more white around the, so I think this might be about as close as we're gonna get, because while it doesn't look exactly as the picture looks, I don't think I can really zoom out much more, but I can try. I can try to zoom out a little bit more. I mean, if I bring in any more of the X or the Y, I'm going to get some red creeping in there, which we don't have any red as part of this one. Well, it's not the X. Hang on. Maybe I just need to make the X scale longer? Is that the problem? No, I don't think so. Let's try this and experiment a little bit. I might end up putting it back to the way I had it before, but... See, we got some red creeping in now because this is going too low. So I can stretch this out a little bit more and make sure that that's the appropriate proportion. So let's see, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It looks like it should be 7 wide, and I mean that's what it is. So I think I got it probably about as close as I'm going to get it with these values right here. But if you disagree with me, you're certainly welcome to use this as sort of a kicking off point and experiment and play around, with it until you get it looking the way that you think that it should look. Clearly, this isn't quite there, but it's close. As far as the assignment, let me take a few moments to wrap up by talking about what you're going to be doing on the assignment this week. So this is the first of a few labs that deal with zombies. So we are not actually going to be doing any zombie chasing in this assignment, but in future assignments we will. For this one, we're just going to get things set up. So what we need you to do is read in some information from a file and then start drawing that information on the screen. The information that you're going to be reading in from a file is going to be information about zombies and non-zombies. So all of those are going to have location values, and you're going to draw them as little circles, little dots on your screen. We're asking you to keep track of those values in a set of parallel arrays. So this is a concept that we've seen before. A very common concept. It's popped up in the prep work already a few times, and now we're asking you to use it on one of the assignments. So you're going to need arrays for different kinds of information that you're reading in from the file. And so you're going to have to use the techniques that we talked about, especially in the first part of the assignment, of the studio today, to read in those values from the file and draw them on the screen, much like we did for the shapes today in studio. So that is the big part of this assignment, but there's a lot more fun coming. You can see here some examples of what the files might look like once they're all drawn out. It's just kind of cool. And so be sure to get started on that, and let me know if you have any questions, if you need any help. I'd love to see you all come into office hours. That's going to do it, though, for the studio review for this week. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I will see you back in class next week.